There's a new letter. The kidnapper wants Bitcoin. TMZ has a new letter in the kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie. TMZ's executive producer joins me to tell you what the letter is offering or demanding. We're also going to be taking a close look at the blood found on Nancy Guthrie's front porch. What story does the blood spatter tell you? A blood spatter expert joins me. And police and FBI detain a man, talk to him for hours and release him. He says he's never heard of Nancy Guthrie and wants his name to be cleared. And someone else got questioned today, not in Arizona, but in the hot seat on Capitol Hill. Attorney General Pam Bondi answering questions, and things got really fiery. Bondi takes no prisoners.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
Your
you're going to answer the
theatrics are
question the
ridiculous.
way I asked it.
Chairman Jordan, I'm not going to get in the gutter with these people.
That's just for starters. You'll see more. Meanwhile, at the White House, it was meeting number 6. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu flies to D.C. to speak with President Trump. What are the two leaders planning about Iran? Senator John Fetterman has consistently supported Israel and U.S. strikes on Iran. The senator joins me this hour. But first, it's day 11. Nancy Guthrie still missing, and today the search for her is expanding. The FBI in Phoenix says agents are searching multiple roadways in the Catalina foothills area. Nancy Guthrie's home is in the foothills. It's an area in the northern area of Tucson. Last night, we thought there was a big break. Police pulled over a man. They detained him. That's their words, detained, and questioned him for several hours. He was later released. He was not their guy. The man was detained hours after authorities released that front door video we all saw. That video actually is a big break. But after that break, we have more questions than answers. So who will answer our questions? Today, the Pima County Sheriff said there are no press briefings nor interviews scheduled, unless, of course, there is a significant development. It has been 5 days since the sheriff last addressed the media. Senior correspondent John Huddy joins me from Tucson. John?
Yeah, and Greta, there are a couple new developments, starting with, as you just mentioned, the FBI out of Phoenix posting that statement today, writing that FBI agents from this morning are conducting an extensive search along multiple roadways. It says in the Catalina foothills area related to the Nancy Guthrie investigation. The Catalina foothills, as you showed on that map, is the area Nancy Guthrie lives in the Tucson area. Very quiet, very secluded, and also very dark. No light, not a lot of lights, a lot of light restriction there. This is the Pima County Sheriff's Department also released an update today saying that it's received 18,000 calls since February 1st when Nancy Guthrie's family reported her missing, and more than 4,000 in the last 24 hours alone, with, quote, several hundred detectives and agents assigned to the case. This after a flurry of events last night, as you mentioned, culminating with the Sheriff's Department saying that it had detained a, quote, subject during a traffic stop south of Tucson in the town of Rio Rico. So this is a small area, about 21,000 people, 10 miles from the Mexico border, about 60 miles south of Tucson. Well, as it turned out, that subject, the gentleman you're seeing there who was detained, is a delivery driver who works, he said, in the Tucson area, who may have delivered a package, he said, to Nancy Guthrie's home. He said he wasn't sure. If anything, he may have been in that Catalina foothills area, but he was questioned for several hours, ultimately released. Here's in part what he had to say last night on some of this.
I hope they get the suspect, because I'm not it. They better do their job and find the suspect that did it so they can clear my name. I'm be done. Just look at what I'm putting my family through. Not just them. Not just them. Even my parents in Tucson.
Yeah, and all of this coming after the FBI, as mentioned, released the pictures and video of that, quote, armed individual at the front doorstep of Nancy Guthrie's home, wearing a mask, gloves, backpack, carrying what appeared to be a handgun in the waistband, and then appearing to tamper, as you're seeing in the video, with that Ring camera the morning Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Also Tuesday, Greta, as we reported, FBI and sheriff's investigators searched the neighborhood where Annie Guthrie lives with her husband, a few miles, about 10-minute drive from her mother's home, though it remains unclear what, if anything, they were looking for, if they were just following up some tips or basically following the thread on any leads. Tuesday, Savannah Guthrie also posting a message on Instagram with the video of that armed individual, of that armed suspect, or subject, I should say, writing that quote, "Someone out there recognizes this person. We believe she," referring to her mother, "is still out there. Bring her home." Now, FBI Director Kash Patel, on that note, who was in Arizona meeting with his agents and also CBP officials here, saying there's been, quote, "significant progress in the case," he says, over the last 36 to 48 hours, and that authorities are looking at multiple persons of interest. He did not elaborate, saying he wanted to protect the integrity of the case, but still, the critical question that remains unanswered, is there any proof of life that 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie is even alive at this point in day 11 now of this investigation, Greta?
Okay, John, I'll tell you what seems odd to me. First of all, it says significant progress has been made in the last 36 to 48 hours. Yes, indeed, with the pictures we now have in the video, and congratulations to Google, whoever did that. But you said that they detained this guy in a traffic stop. That's not just a traffic stop. You don't just pull someone over in a red light and all of a sudden pick them up. I mean, they must have some reason to do that. And I don't think they're being I don't think this was a traffic stop. And I feel bad for the guy. He doesn't seem like the guy because he's released. So that's peculiar. So it does not look to me that the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff are working together. It seems like there's an awful lot of confusion unless there's much going on behind the scene that I'm unaware of.
Well, it's an interesting point, because I just talked to a former law enforcement official, somebody who's here in Arizona, who's dealt with the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the Sheriff, Chris Nanos, and there's been some issues between the feds and between the Sheriff's Department in the past. They haven't worked together very well in the past, according to this one former law enforcement official that I spoke with. We talked about, he's involved in cybersecurity. We talked about the possible huge breakthrough with that Ring camera video that before was inaccessible, but the FBI was able to access that video. He thinks that could lead the feds, federal officials, to finding that person in it if they don't already know who it is. He also believes that individual probably knew the property, probably had been there, felt comfortable there, and he found it, this individual, this law enforcement official, found it odd why the guy was just walking, or the person, whomever it was it male or female, just walked up to that Ring camera instead of coming out and removing it. That shows that possibly this person may have known that camera wasn't working. But getting back to the relationship between Pima County and the feds, it has been strained in the past, and that's something that's been reported, and that's something that I'm hearing as well, Greta.
Well, key evidence, I think, in the end will turn out to be the blood on the porch, because even if the car were brought right up to that car, there's going to be even just a tiny drop even in the frame of the car or the seat, and luminol, which they use to detect blood, will be what ultimately ties whoever it is who did this to this crime. John Huddy, thank you.
Thanks, Greta.
And coming up later this hour, because I happen to think the blood evidence is so critical, we're going to have a blood spatter expert. We're going to ask about the blood on the porch. What kind of clues does that blood tell? A forensic expert will be joining us. That when we come back. Plus, Prime Minister is at the White House. Are he and the President Trump planning something? Senator John Fetterman joins me next. That when the record continues.
You served your country with honor. Now get the benefits you've rightfully earned. Paul R. Lawrence has written the book every veteran should own, Veterans Benefits for You. This step-by-step guide breaks down what you need to know, from financial compensation and disabilities to information for dependents and parents. This book is a must-read for all servicemen and women. Get your free copy today with our special offer. Call the number on your screen or go online to order.
I am sure you're aware foods contain no more than 10 to 12 minerals. This is because of topsoil mineral depletion. Your body needs many more than 12 minerals to be healthy. How can you get them? I recommend Immuno 150. This incredible nutritional supplement is different. It doesn't contain metallic minerals like most vitamin and mineral supplements. Immuno 150 contains 70 easily digested plant-derived minerals and 80 additional nutrients. There is nothing like it. The 70 plant minerals are the key to its effectiveness, its popularity, and its high reorder rate. If you want a food supplement that produces outstanding results and really makes a difference, try Immuno 150. Look at the 3 videos on the Amino 150 website and consider placing an order. Thank you.
Got eyelid itching, crusties, and swelling that won't go away? It could be
Demodex blepharitis, and we're Demodex mites. We're very common and super irritating to your eyelids, but we love making ourselves comfortable here. Oh yeah, steam time!
if Demodex mites are partying it up on your eyelids, it's time to eliminate the root of the problem with Xdemvy. With 1 drop in each eye twice a day, you can kill the mites in just 6 weeks. Xdemvy is the first and only FDA-approved treatment that kills the mites that cause Demodex blepharitis, a common eyelid disease. Avoid touching the tip of the bottle to your eye or other surfaces to minimize contamination. Wait 15 minutes before inserting contact lenses. In clinical trials, the most common side effects were stinging and burning in 1 out of 10 patients.
Party's over, folks.
It's not you, it's Demodex mites. Talk to your eye doctor today.
Today at the White House, President Trump hosted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The meeting between the two world leaders was closed to the press, but according to the White House, the pair spoke about the plan for Gaza and Iran. After the meeting, President Trump took to Truth Social to say in part, quote, "There was nothing definitive reached other than I insisted that negotiations with Iran continue to see whether or not a deal can be consummated. If it can, I let the Prime Minister know that will be a preference. If it cannot, we will just have to see what the outcome will be. Last time Iran decided that they were better off not making a deal, and they were hit with midnight hammer. That did not work well for them," end quote. And here is a little history for you. On the day that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu meet at the White House to discuss Iran, on this day, 47 years ago, on February 11th, 1979, the Iranian Revolution reached its peak. That's the day the army declared neutrality and revolutionaries took control of Tehran. This officially ended the monarchy of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. That is when Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini took over as the leader of the Islamic Republic. This later led to what happened months later, November 4th, 1979. That is when Iranian students supporting the Islamic Revolution stormed the United States Embassy in Tehran. Students took 52 American hostages and held them for more than a year. The students took over the U.S. Embassy and took American hostages. And this seizure was in retaliation for U.S. allowing the exiled Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi to enter the United States for cancer treatment. About a year later, on January 20th, 1981, as President Jimmy Carter was leaving office, and minutes after former President Ronald Reagan took the oath of office as president, the American hostages were released by Iran as a slap at President Carter. As a courtesy to President Carter, though, President Reagan graciously sent now citizen Carter to Germany to meet the American hostages who had been held for more than a year and who are now free. Democratic Senator from Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, joins me. Good afternoon, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you for that. I had no idea that it was actually February the 11th too. I remember that. Like, it's just so remarkable. Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible, and that regime has been ruling with an iron fist ever since. And to think that before that date, the United States enjoyed such a great relationship with the Iranian people, and Iran wasn't funding Hezbollah, wasn't funding Hamas or the Houthis, wasn't trying to destroy Israel, but all changed, really began changing that day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look where we are now. They massacred tens of thousands of their young people now, like just executed them in the streets. And now you've seen those, I've seen some of those videos that they smuggled out and for what they've done. And there was no protests on the college campuses or in a lot of the left media. They don't talk about those things. So, but now, and this is why, I absolutely was fully supportive and was cheering for that midnight hammer. And now if that's required for a second round, I'll be the one Democrat to absolutely say that's entirely appropriate.
Well, you raise a good point, is that the college campuses are not protesting what happened to the Iranian citizens in this the last 6 weeks when they're being slaughtered by the regime. But in terms of today, why do you think that the Prime Minister came all the way from Israel for this short conference with the President?
Well, what I think the Israel came was like they are the experts on the Iranian capabilities and the intelligence. What they've been able to do, they blew up a member of Hamas within Iran, and then when they decided finally to take out the Iranian forces, they've done that, and they've maintained air supremacy after about 2 days, and they could have laid waste to Tehran, but they did not. Their war was never about the Iranian people. They were against this poisonous regime, and now it's so much more weakened since that. And now we have possible peace, and now it's more and more difficult for Iran to fund Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthis now. And now those are the other organizations that have been broken and beaten into submission. So here we are, and that's why the prime minister is here, because President Trump has been, for me, we're in lockstep with standing with Israel through that, regardless of our different parties.
Well, you raise this stuff with the Iranian people. Yeah, we're not at war with them. Prime Minister Netanyahu makes that evident in every conversation I've had with him, every interview, that it's not the Iranian people. But we're bringing all this military might, all these assets to the region, when really I assume what they would prefer is some sort of surgical strike where we take out the leadership, because the Iranian people, they don't even want them.
Exactly, and that's why I'm going to trust Israel's intelligence. I mean, just how magnificent it's been. When they hit Iran, look at what they've done with the beepers and the walkie-talkies for Hezbollah. I mean, it's just incredible what their capabilities, what they're able to reach people. And that's why they have the best intelligence, and that's why they're going to work very closely with President Trump. And then when they realize that negotiations, and I don't believe you can't really trust. I mean, the last time there was a treaty with Iran, they ended up with 900 pounds of just a step below of nuclear weapon grade, enrichment. So that's why, we demonstrated last year that we can hit them. We know where they are, and we have the capabilities to reach them. And now here we are again. And that's why, the prime minister's here, because I think we're all in lockstep to stand with Israel as our special ally. And that's why I'm proud to stand with the prime minister and now with the president to continue. And if they do bring up another Iranian war powers bill, I will vote that no, just like I did the first time they brought that up.
One last question. Save America Act is going to come up before the U.S. Senate, which requires voter ID. You've been in favor of voter IDs, have you not, sir?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of parts about, the SAFE Act, but one thing that the SAFE Act is, that is not Jim Crow 2.0. And for any of those things, to be very clear, I would never use that kind of extreme rhetoric. And now there's many states, some, Democrat ones that, showing their ID to vote. I mean, that's not unreasonable. I mean, and now I remind people, Wisconsin back in April, when they had a significant election, Wisconsin elected a very, very liberal justice to the Supreme Court by nearly 2-to-1 margin, 2-to-1. They add that to their constitution that they have to produce ID when they're going to vote. So now Wisconsin, they elected someone very liberal like Tammy Baldwin, and then someone like Ron Johnson, who's an avowed conservative. So that's here we are. I think a significant majority of Americans are okay with showing basic ID. Now, that is not a passport. That was not, like in Wisconsin, that's a basic state ID. And those states provide that for free. So it's not about a driver's license or anything, just saying, hey, this is who I am and that we're going to vote. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Senator John Fetterman, I appreciate you naming my state, calling out my state, the great state of Wisconsin. Thank you, sir.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have a Packers problem, but otherwise, this is a Steelers guy. Like, you had to bring up the Packers, but yeah. So.
I'll just say one thing, is that one of your best Steelers players went to my high school, Rocky Blyer, so don't go bragging about anything. So he's really from Wisconsin.
I didn't know that. Well, hey, well, thanks for having me on. All right.
Thank you, sir. Heated exchanges on Capitol Hill today. Attorney General Pam Bondi testifying before the House Judiciary Committee. The hearing was called, quote, oversight of the United States Department of Justice, end quote, as you might imagine. Bondi was grilled about the Epstein files, and Pam Bondi takes no prisoners.
You're not going to answer this question, so let me just
Chairman,
say
I'll
this.
direct it to
What
you.
a massive
No, I'm
cover-up.
answering a question.
Chairman, will you restore her time? The witness is interrupted.
I'm not going to get in the gutter with this woman.
Stop the
She's
time
doing
and
theatrics.
let me-
Within 40
Chairman.
minutes, you asked me a question.
You can
Within
give me-
40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes
You
of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
Where
of
he's
over
listed as a
4,700,
co-conspirator. Okay.
and we invited
You know what?
you
Show the
in.
video.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get. You're a failed politician.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch.
Reclaiming-
Not on our time. No way. And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me.
Yeah, oh, I
anything,
did tell you because we
washed
saw
up
what you did in the
loser
Senate.
Lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Jeffrey Epstein was charged in July 2019 for sex trafficking under the Trump administration in his first term. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman.
And that Ghislaine Maxwell was charged in 2020 also under the Trump administration, correct?
Yes, Congressman.
So it is safe to say that the administration led on that issue and that there was silence in the previous administration. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman.
Was the president aware of Secretary Lutnick's ties to Epstein when he chose him to lead the Department of Commerce? Was he aware?
Chris Malin was a Border Patrol agent.
Okay, so I'm going to conclude that the president, in fact, did know about his ties because he was the next-door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes,
You're
this
from
is
a tiny-
pathetic.
Hypocrisy. Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. But for years on the other side of the aisle, we heard nothing. Crickets, not a word. Nothing was said when they were in control.
Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing concludes.
The gentleman has expired.
May I respond?
Yeah, I don't know how you respond. No one can.
I did not
can
ask a
respond,
question,
but
Mr.
he
Head.
doesn't
You're
want
allowed
to talk
to.
about
I did
the
not ask a
horrific
question.
crime in California. He does not want to talk about
I did not ask a
crime
question.
in his
She
state.
can't just
Madam
ask
Attorney
lip
General.
stuff. I did not ask a question.
Wow. Pam Bondi, by the way, I've known her for 30 years. She, as I said, she takes no prisoners. She also answered questions about threats to public officials. She said no one should be threatened. She was also questioned on the investigation going into the 2 fatal shootings in Minneapolis. Bondi said law enforcement in sanctuary cities quietly want to work with federal law enforcement. Coming up, TMZ has received a new note in the Nancy Guthrie case. What does it say? I will ask TMZ's executive producer. Plus, an important regional U.S. airport was mysteriously closed and then reopened. What caused that? When the record continues.
I switched.
I switched. I switched.
I switched to Newsmax.
Newsmax. Newsmax.
Have you made the switch?
You bet I did. My whole family switched.
Millions are switching to Newsmax. You should too.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and they're gonna love it.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
This isn't your average pill. This is Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks.
Rose Sparks is a fast-acting solution because it dissolves under your tongue.
Rose Sparks.
Guys, get started today.
Connect with a provider to find out if Rose Sparks are right for you.
I've had the highest mountains. I've had the deepest rivers. I'll take it in, but don't look down. 'Cause I'm on top of the world. I'm on top of the world. I've been waiting this long.
Champions trust Cosequin, the #1 vet-recommended retail joint health supplement brand and official joint health supplement of the Westminster Dog Show.
The sound of an American original. It's the Omaha Steaks President's Day event, and we're celebrating with our President's Day assortment, all for just $99.99. Save 50% site-wide and get free burgers when you visit omahasteaks.com/TV today.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 91 years of age, here with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you.
It really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order now. You'll be glad you did.
Well, it's clear the mystery is growing, if that's possible, and nothing gives us confidence that it will end anytime soon and end well. 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie has been missing since the early morning hours of February 1. The last known sighting of the woman was the night before at her daughter and son-in-law's home. Today, TMZ says it has received another note, their second since the woman was kidnapped. TMZ executive producer Charles Latibeaudiere joins me. Nice to have you back again, Charles. Can you tell me anything about this new note, when you received it, and I don't know if you can tell me what it says.
Yeah, I can tell you what it says, and this one is slightly different in that it does not appear to be something from the kidnapper themselves. Instead, it is someone trying to rat out the kidnapper. So we received this email early this morning. It was about 5 a.m. Pacific time, and it basically says that I have information about the kidnapper. It says this person says that they tried to contact Cameron and Annie, Savannah's siblings, by email and text, but they've been unsuccessful. So they are writing to tell us that they have this information. They need to be paid 1 Bitcoin, and once they're paid that Bitcoin, they will share their information about the kidnapper with law enforcement. Now, I can't say whether this is real. Of course, we forwarded this to the FBI because on the outside chance that maybe it is someone who does have information about the kidnapper, clearly the FBI would be interested in that. But beyond that, I just can't say whether there's anything here. There's no, like the first ransom note we got, Greta, had details that only someone who had been in the house would know, and that certainly gave it an air of legitimacy. This one is just someone claiming that they know information and that they will share it if they get paid. Really, the only similarity is the calling for Bitcoin. And again, this note does have a Bitcoin address that is legitimate. We looked at it. There have been no transactions in it, so it might have been something that was created just for this purpose.
Well, doesn't the FBI, don't they have a $50,000 award out there for a tip, and they do it anonymously?
Yeah, they do, and which is weird because I was checking this morning once we got the email, and Bitcoin now this morning was around $67,000 for a Bitcoin. So, yeah, this would be slightly more than the $50,000 reward that police are offering. And that, too, made me feel like, does this person really have information, or are they just trying to exploit a really horrible situation?
Or it's somebody who hangs around with a person who deals in Bitcoin, like the kidnapper. Because I got to tell you, Charles, if I were doing this, I'd have to ask for the $50,000. I wouldn't know how to do Bitcoin. You know, maybe everybody else does, but I wouldn't. So, you know, so it makes me think it's someone who's sort of in the Bitcoin world to make a Bitcoin demand like that.
It does. The second I saw that they were asking for Bitcoin, two things. It made me think that they may actually have some knowledge here because that they deal in that world, and that maybe whether they were involved in the abduction or not, they hang around, as you said, hang around with people who might have pulled off something like this, who might have planned something like this. It just made me feel like their motives here are not all above board, because a normal citizen, I think, would be fine with, a $50,000 cash reward, and wouldn't be asking for it in Bitcoin.
No, and of course you wouldn't have the police tracking you down afterwards, the FBI. Did this note come about the same time as the ransom note, or were there any similarities, anything at all that might suggest that they have some relationship?
When we got the original ransom note just over a week ago, that came in around like 10 or 11 a.m., so not the same time. And again, the Bitcoin address, important to note, is different from the Bitcoin address that was in that original note, so no similarity there.
Anything? Are you getting a lot of kooky stuff, a lot of notes? Because I imagine now the word is out. I would imagine you're going to get flooded with copycats.
Yes, a lot of. We've been sifting through them. In fact, before we came on, I just saw one that was. It's so outrageous. I can't even. Outrageous and really just awful. Some of the things that they're saying. People suggesting that they know things about Nancy that. It's clear. The good news is it's easy to look at them and say, okay, this is ridiculous. We're not going to, bother the FBI with this. But there are some that come in like this one this morning where you go, look, maybe. And that we want to make sure to pass on to law enforcement.
Charles, as always, thank you very much. TMZ is a great place to get the information.
Thank you.
And a scare in the air near the border. Late last night, the FAA grounded all flights at El Paso International Airport. El Paso is a border city with a population of about 700,000 people. The El Paso Airport describes itself as the gateway to West Texas, southern New Mexico, and northern Mexico. And today, the airport was supposed to be closed for 10 days, but then suddenly it was reopened. What's going on? How do you go from 10 days to be closed to now just 1 day? We'll find out. National Security Correspondent Carla Babb joins me. Carla.
Hey, Greta. Yeah, there are some conflicting explanations about this closure that was lifted hours after it was announced. Multiple administration officials initially told Newsmax that Mexican cartel drones breached U.S. airspace, with Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy posting that the, quote, cartel drone incursion was neutralized today. Now, two officials who spoke to Newsmax on condition of anonymity said there is counter-drone testing currently underway at Fort Bliss near the U.S. southern border, and that testing involves laser technology. Now, this testing, we're told, caused concern with the FAA, and they decided to close down the airspace without notifying the White House after they learned the military had struck some potential targets. And we've heard from officials that the targets were foreign drones, but Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said her government has no information indicating drone activity along the U.S.-Mexico border. And a U.S. official told Newsmax at least one of those targets was merely a foil balloon, like the one you might give a loved one for Valentine's Day. So we've heard that from other outlets as well. But what's most confusing to me, Greta, is why any of this would lead to a TFR, a temporary flight restriction, because there are hundreds of these types of incursions each month. So this is not new. I mean, we can pull up a headline from the Northern Command testifying about this very issue on Capitol Hill 2 years ago, Greta. But I mean, at least fortunately for the people of El Paso, the airspace is not going to be closed for 10 days, and normal operations have resumed.
It does have a little feel of Who's on First, that old comedy routine, because it's sort of hard to figure out. Like the government doesn't seem to figure this one out, get different answers. Anyway, Carla Babb, thank you. Coming up. Since clues on the Nancy Guthrie case have been pretty sparse, we called a blood spatter expert. That when the record continues.
And the teachers' unions are in the business of indoctrination.
It's a cultural Marxist war for power in America, and your children are the key. Find out how radical ideology is taking over businesses, media, and even our schools. Watch Newsfront, Marxism in America.
You deserve high quality. You really do. At Balance of Nature, we don't cut corners. We could cut corners or extract individual vitamins and minerals rather than source whole foods. But that's not who we are. We don't isolate one specific part and sell it alone. Why? Because phytonutrients are woven into the whole plant. Everything works together as one complete package the way nature intended. Balance of Nature supplements aren't dried juice or a powdered extract. They are a vibrant mix of ingredients of 47 whole fruits, vegetables, spices, and fibers. Each ingredient then goes through a tailored vacuum-cooled process, is grounded into a fine powder, and packed into plant-based capsules in order to preserve those naturally occurring phytonutrients. We are real ingredients only, always. Start your journey with Balance of Nature supplements. Go to balanceofnature.com and subscribe and save today.
I lost 110 pounds. You couldn't tell at all because of my excess skin. Sonobella changed that.
Introducing the new Lift EX, the just one visit total body transformation.
I decided to give Sonobella a try. You can see my waist.
Lift EX is our breakthrough 360-degree body lift alternative that sculpts, tightens, and lifts your stomach, waist, thighs, and backside. And Lift EX is exclusively available at Sonobello. Easy monthly plans make your best body more affordable than ever. Call to book your free consultation today.
Satellite internet that's fast, reliable, and installed by professionals. For work, for play, for every day. Available anywhere you call home. Visit Viasat.com/internet now or call 833-8Viasat to sign up today.
Get ready for spring now at Blue Compass RV with RV show prices at over 100 locations coast to coast. Forest River Auroras from $98 a month. Alliance Delta Solos from $198 a month. Or Jayco Greyhawks from $744 a month. Save on the largest selection of America's premium brands with RV show prices on over 15,000 new and used RVs. Hurry to Blue Compass RV. Shop online or in store today.
Oh, it's cold outside. Time to protect your vehicle from winter's wrath. Of course, the hot sun can be tough on vehicles too. You need WeatherTech. Laser-measured floor liners and cargo liner will shield the carpeting from sand and snow. For your interior, there's seat protector and sunshade, plus mud flaps and bump step for the exterior. Impact liner with shock-absorbing rings safeguards your truck bed from costly damage. Order American-made products at WT.com. Surf's up.
Some wireless companies say that they stand for something. What exactly do they stand for, and why won't they say it out loud? Let me tell you what Patriot Mobile stands for. They stand for the lives of the unborn. They stand for the Second Amendment and the right to protect yourself and your family. They stand for our veterans and first responders who sacrifice so much for our freedom. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today and support a company that doesn't just say they stand for something, but one that stands for the things that matter the most.
We're doing what the FBI is doing. We are analyzing crime scene photos, the ones at least that we have from Nancy Guthrie's home. There is blood on her porch in one of the pictures, and besides showing that she was bleeding, does it tell anything else, or are there any other clues that you can get from blood? Forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Pettler joins me. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Greta.
Okay, I know you've seen the picture of the spots on the porch. That doesn't seem to be much blood. Does it seem like a lot of blood to you?
No, it doesn't. It seems like a very small amount of blood, a very small volume is what we would call it. And it appears to be on a hard surface, which would be the tile. And it is, to me, there looks like there's some what we call low velocity impact spatter, which would be blood that's only affected by gravity being pulled down to the earth and impacting the target. So it's not a lot of blood.
Wait. So what I mean, we obviously we're just guessing. I'm making an assumption that this 84-year-old woman, like a lot of people over the age of 65, are on blood thinners, so they're going to bleed a lot easier. So, you know, I mean, to me, I think like it could even be like a nosebleed, because it seems to start and then seems to stop. It doesn't seem to, there doesn't seem to be a long trail.
Right. So you're right. It can be a small injury. It could be something consistent like that with a nosebleed, but it doesn't imply that there's some extremely violent event going on right there. It only gives us a glimpse into what is happening exactly in that moment on that surface in particular.
Well, you and I probably, I know you have and I have too, seen a lot of ugly crime scene pictures. Usually there's a terrific amount of blood, so this seems like not a lot, but certainly alarming.
Yes, it is not a lot of blood, but it does imply that there is an injury. And my understanding is that the DNA came back to being Nancy Guthrie. So that is also concerning. And like you said, you know, there are a lot of people this age that are on blood thinners. We do know that she had some cardiac type condition, which would, of course, also allude to that. And so we do take those things into consideration when we're analyzing blood stain patterns, because we always want to be ultra conservative and not overreach so that we keep it in perspective.
Am I correct in that, I mean, if she got into the car and she had a little bit of blood, even less than this, and had just a tiny drop in the car, that luminol, which what the police always use to detect for blood, the luminol would pick that up likely?
Yes. Luminol is a great product. There's a product called Blue Star as well. It's a luminol like Blue Star, and it really, really glows a lot brighter. So they can use any of those types of products to bring up blood that they can't see necessarily, or if the blood in the car is cleaned up, for example, they can also use luminol, Blue Star, and other type of reagents to bring that blood up to make it visible to where it can be photographed.
Is there anything you can apply to blood on a spot in a car, even one that you can't see with your eyes, that would neutralize it so that that these two products wouldn't identify it?
There are a lot of cleaning products that people do apply, such as bleach, and I've seen Febreze and all kinds of cleaning products. But honestly, in my experience, when we Blue Star a car, which is, like I said, it's a luminol type product, it just glows brighter and you don't have to completely darken the area, like black out the room. My experience is that the bleach will look more of like a white blue, and then the blood, because of the hemoglobin and the protein, it will actually look like a dark blue. So even though they clean it up, we'll still be able to see it.
And of course, even if you can't see it, even if by chance those products do neutralize it, it's pretty weird if someone has a recently cleaned car with some of those products. I mean, even that's not particularly, good for someone who might have that problem. Anyway, Dr. Laura Pettler, thank you very much. I hope you come back.
Thank you.
Now to Canada, where 9 people were killed and dozens injured in 2 shootings, both carried out by the same shooter. It happened in British Columbia. There was a shooting at a high school. Authorities say 7 people were killed at the school. Then police found 2 people dead at a nearby home. The suspect was found deceased. Earlier today, police gave this update.
Officers entered the school to locate the threat. Within minutes, an individual confirmed to be the shooter was located deceased with what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The suspect has been identified as 18-year-old Jesse Van Susteren, who is a resident of Tumbler Ridge. We identified the suspect as they chose to be identified in public and in social media. I can say that Jesse was born as a biological male. Approximately 6 years ago, began to transition to female and identified as female.
As of now, the motive remains unclear. This is one of Canada's deadliest mass shootings since 2020. Coming up, a man detained, the word that's used by law enforcement, and questioned in the search for Nancy Guthrie. But was he really arrested? And what difference? That when the record continues.
I'm Elmer Heinrich. At 91 years of age, here with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you.
It really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order now. You'll be glad you did.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this Red Beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at GetTrumpWatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
I was tired of being exhausted at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and constantly suffering from brain fog.
Toxic EMF radiation is coming from your cell phone and smart devices and being absorbed by your body.
We don't see EMFs. It's out of sight, out of mind.
That's why people around the world are choosing Bodywell. Bodywell's technology holds a harmonic pattern that helps your body respond better to EMF exposure, reducing EMF radiation absorption up to 80%. Just peel, stick, and protect.
This little device changed everything.
Bodywell's BioCard protects your entire body. Simply place it in your pocket.
I didn't believe in EMF protection until I actually felt the difference.
I sleep much better, more like a baby. I mean, my kids are my world, and I want to do everything I can to protect them and give them a better life.
Order your BioCard today, and for a limited time, get a BioChip, a $99 value for free. Go to Bodywell.com. That's Bodywell.com.
What did they do to the house? They broke the doors. What else, man? The garage door in the back.
So what are you going to do now?
I'll try to clear my name. I didn't do anything. And I hope they get the suspect, because I'm not it. They better do their job and find the suspect that did it so they can clear my name. I'm done. Just look at what I'm putting my family through.
You're on
not just them.
News now.
Not just them. Even my parents in Tucson.
Why did you think they came to you?
If I would have known that answer, I would have given it to you, but I don't.
So you have no idea what led them
No,
to
I
you?
do not.
Nothing. They didn't.
Nothing.
They didn't say car make, a license, nothing.
Nada.
That was the man whose name has not been released, who last night law enforcement said was detained. He was questioned in the search for Nancy Guthrie. After hours of questioning, he was released. Law enforcement said they detained him, but was he really arrested? And what difference if detained or arrested? What are a detainee's rights? Professor Emeritus of Harvard Law School, Alan Dershowitz, joins me. Professor, I'm beginning to get very critical of this investigation. We're so many days in, and there are some pretty good clues. But last night, they kept saying this man was detained and not arrested. Does that distinction bother you? It does bother me, and I think probably for the same reason it might bother you.
Of course it bothers me, and it bothers me because functionally he was arrested. He couldn't leave. He couldn't get up and say, I want to leave. He was in a kind of intermediate situation. He wasn't detained enough to give him a right to counsel or a right to be told that he didn't have to answer questions, but detained enough so that he couldn't actually leave. Now, the good news for him is he doesn't have to list that he was arrested on any applications for a job because he wasn't formally arrested. But the Miranda rights clicked in. He was detained, he couldn't leave, and he was thought to be possibly a subject of the investigation. That's enough to give you the Miranda rights. I doubt they gave him the Miranda rights because they probably realized pretty early on that he was not a person of real interest.
Well, they said it was a traffic stop, and they detained him. First of all, they were looking for him. If they wasn't, they just didn't randomly find some guy running a red light. They broke the doors on his house, as he says. And of course, if you are arrested, your rights kick in. But the definition of arrest isn't that you have to be told you're under arrest. It's what would a reasonable person think. And if you are taken down to the police station and questioned for hours, as a reasonable person would think, you can't go home.
And he couldn't go home. If he had tried to leave, they would have stopped him. And so, yes, for purposes of his rights, he was arrested. But for purposes of having to list anything, he was not. you know, the word detain has always had a very vague meaning. I was detained once at a Red Sox game because I had gotten tickets to the game and somebody else had reported stolen tickets, and they mistakenly assumed that I had the stolen ticket, and they detained me. And then they apologized profusely and begged me not to sue. He could sue. There's no doubt he can sue. Running a red light or having a traffic stop is not a basis for being detained unless there's more. And if he did sue, the police would have to come up with justifications. Maybe they had a justification. We're not aware of it. But, you know, it's an area, American Law Institute had a whole issue about what it means to be detained. And after months and months, they couldn't figure it out.
All right, any thoughts on this investigation? I know you've handled a bunch of them yourself over your career. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, that there are a lot of copycats out there. There were probably some fake ransom notes, maybe real ones. If I thought a ransom note was real and it was my family, I would at least pay a portion of it so that perhaps it could be traced and then promise the rest on proof of life. I don't know what the family is actually doing. We don't know that. But we seem no closer. And, you know, the tragedy, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news to anybody, but, you know, if you're a criminal lawyer and been through this, you have to be a pessimist. The tragic outcome may be that we may never know anything. We may never learn. We may never recover. We've had cases like this over the years. One hopes and prays that whether she's alive or dead, that she is returned to her family for, as they say, to celebrate her life or to celebrate her death.
Boy, that video, though, was a big break, I think, last night.
Big break,
the video
big
and the
break.
pictures. Big break.
It'll be an even bigger break because then that video could be used to identify him and confirm it. It's much easier when you have a person to show it's the person in the uniform than it is to use the vague uniform to find the person.
Indeed. Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
And it's time. It's time for our outrage of the day. Okay, what's in the water? Not something you would ever dare touch, let alone drink. You ready for this? Here in Washington, D.C., raw, untreated sewage water is in the Potomac River. On January 19th, D.C. Water says a sewer line collapsed, causing 243 million gallons of wastewater to go into the Potomac River. To understand how much 243 million gallons of water is, imagine one Olympic-sized swimming pool, but multiply that Olympic-sized pool 368 times. Yes, 368 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of sewage went into the Potomac. And if that's not enough for you, try this. It happened again on Sunday night. There was another sewage spill. This time, D.C. Water says it was caused by non-disposable wipes. Too many wipes that were not supposed to be flushed caused another spill. That spill released 600,000 gallons of sewage into the Potomac. Local reports say the pumps are now working, but this issue will not be fixed for weeks. A local reporter called the stench, quote, revolting. No kidding, what was the clue? And now, something to celebrate. Today, the city of Seattle hosted the Seahawks Super Bowl victory parade. On Sunday, Seattle beat the New England Patriots. It is the city's first sports championship in 12 years. The last championship was also the Seahawks when they won the Super Bowl in 2014. Today, a lot of people probably took a work day off to watch the parade, but the city's kids, they didn't get off so easily. Why? Because Seattle's public schools stayed open today, and if kids played hooky to watch the parade, the district said it will be an unexcused absence. I say, give the kids a break. It was Super Bowl. Coming up, crisis averted. This was solved the old-fashioned way, barking. That when the record continues.
It's our America. We built it. Courage, freedom. Millions go to Newsmax when they need to know. Start today on the free Newsmax app. Newsmax is real news for real people.
Like a relentless weed, moderate to severe Crohn's disease symptoms can keep coming back. Break away to what's possible with Tremfya. With rapid remission at 12 weeks, and fewer bowel movements and less abdominal pain at 4 weeks. Most patients achieved remission at 1 year, and some patients saw visible healing of the intestinal lining. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Healing is possible with Tremfya. Backed by over 15 years of clinical research. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, and they're gonna love it.
Here at LeafGuard, we believe our customers say it best.
I would rate LeafGuard a 10. Every chance I get, I try to tell people about LeafGuard gutters because I'm very happy with them.
And they were leaking water into our house. Now with these, I haven't had any water issues.
Open-top gutters don't work well in winter conditions. Even with a screen or mesh cover, they still don't compare to LeafGuard. You know, for the most part, we can install LeafGuard in less than 1 day, even during winter. Or call now to get on our early spring installation schedule. Take advantage of our $99 install sale. Receive $99 installation on a complete LeafGuard system. Ask about no interest and no payments for 18 months. Let me keep your gutters clean forever. Call LeafGuard now and get dinner for two, a $100 gift card with your free in-home estimate.
My overall experience would have to be a 10.
LeafGuard system so far has been fantastic.
It's a no maintenance, no hassle type of system.
And they take in lots of water.
Take a look at LeafGuard's exclusive Big Mouth. The larger opening and oversized downspouts move water away from your home fast. And LeafGuard has been lab tested to handle up to 32 inches of rainfall an hour. Don't deal with those old gutters any longer. Call LeafGuard now during the $99 install sale. Receive $99 installation for a limited time on a complete LeafGuard system. Ask about no interest and no payments for 18 months. If you call LeafGuard now, we have a nice gift for you. Dinner for two, that's a $100 value with your free in-home estimate. Call 800-541-1274. Now let me give you that number again. 1-800-541-1274. And LeafGuard is proud to be a Great Day Improvements brand. With our Great Day loyalty discount, receive 10% off any of our other products with your LeafGuard purchase.
You deserve high quality. You really do. At Balance of Nature, we don't cut corners. We could cut corners or extract individual vitamins and minerals rather than source whole foods. But that's not who we are. We don't isolate one specific part and sell it alone. Why? Because phytonutrients are woven into the whole plant. We are real ingredients only, always. Go to balanceofnature.com and subscribe and save today.
Police officers in Louisville, Kentucky launched a massive search for a missing 3-year-old. Officers spread out across the area on foot. They even used drones. A neighbor's camera helped pinpoint a location, but the break in the case did not come from technology. It came from a dog. Out of nowhere, the dog started barking at officers. The dog then led police to the boy who was found inside a car. Thanks to the dog, the 3-year-old is safe, and the dog is a hero. Thank you for watching. Ed Henry, The Big Take, is next. Stay with Newsmax.